not my problem. But you mess with their gas for vacation and you mess with their hamburgers and their steak. And these two things really seemed to shake up America and grab the headlines. And there was a flurry of action. Like, did anyone really know that Acer and Fuji and Hyundai were hit? Who cares? That's their problem. But when you messed with the pipeline and you messed with the food supply, that grabbed the headlines. And what we had was a dramatic change in the insurance market, which I'll be speaking about. We had the White House executive order that came out, which had helped add some oomph and some guidance. Congress put over 117 bills, I think it was, very quickly. They pushed them forward. And a lot of that's for show, back for your constituents back home. But it was getting movement to happen. Here's the one that really helps. The DOJ Ransomware Task Force. Now there are teeth. They're going after people. You may have heard on the Colonial Pipeline, they got back 70% of the money. Yeah, that's because the DOJ, and the FBI is part of the DOJ, they went and they hacked the hackers. They also raised ransomware in the United States to the same level of terrorism. Now you have resources behind it. Now you have government commitment. They are looking at every lever they can use to help us combat and not be getting hit all the time. You may hear that the president is meeting with 30 other countries in the next couple of weeks to talk about ransomware and what they can do collectively to get other countries to stop harboring ransomware attackers. And NIST already had on, and I'm going to speak about NIST in a second, they already had the ransomware framework on their roadmap. They expedited it very quickly after the Colonial Pipeline, and all of these things were stood up within just a matter of 60 days. Okay, so now that we got that out of the way, let's talk about solutions. We understand, you know, how bad it is. It's bad and getting worse, but it doesn't mean we can't beat this thing. I beat it 3 times. It's not really rocket science. It's just putting certain things in place and committing to it. And the hardest part is usually getting organizational commitment. When we're dealing with threat actors, though, we have to remember we are dealing with criminals. These aren't the most upstanding people. They are criminals. They're usually in gangs. Those gangs really started to form cartels in late 2019, early 2020. And of course, we always have the state-sponsored actors. They're usually money-driven, not always, and they're opportunistic. And when I say opportunistic, I mean, if you take a look at this picture here, water will flow to any point of least resistance. And that's what threat actors tend to do. You know, sometimes if they're paid a lot of money to go after one little piece of intellectual property, that's different. But in general, with ransomware, they're only going to go where there's low-hanging fruit and they can get in easily. So the name of the game on our side is we need to harden these targets. We need to seal up these pathways. Just like if we sealed up these entryways here on this picture, the water would flow in a different direction. We want the threat actors to go somewhere else. And that's what really helped with my organization. We beat them 3 times, and by that time they realized we had hardened our organization to the point never was ransomware again, to date. I'm knocking on wood over here. So how do you do this thing? Well, some of it is really not sexy. You know, a lot of times people think, well, I can buy my way out of it. You can only do that to a certain degree. You really have to work on what you may have heard terms in the military or in security, they call left of bang activities, or keep it left before you have a bad incident. Because after that, everything's just incident response and countermeasures. And that's where planning and policies and tabletop exercises and making sure you have good game plans in place. That takes work. It's like writing a policy. No one ever wants to do that and pull people into a conference room. But if you're just hoping, hey, ransomware hits, yeah, we all know what to do, right? And we all run around, you're going to struggle. If you have plans and policies in place that are living documents that are constantly tested, let's say quarterly, at least annually, and your employees are trained, everyone kind of snaps into gear and knows what to do. One final note on these, you've probably all seen this quote before from Mike Tyson. You know, everyone has a plan until they get punched in the mouth. And same thing when you're doing your ransomware planning. You know, maybe you have nothing right now. Okay, so let's start just with a document. All right, what do we have in place to combat ransomware, and then start writing out things, and then build out from there and make it a living document that's cyclical. But the key is you have to test it and then say, oh boy, we never thought of that yet. So there are our lesson learned. We adjust it, we test it again, and we refine it and grow. Otherwise, I can tell you firsthand, the first time you get ransomware and it's going across your organization, and I had 5,000 users and 8,000 devices, it will stop you in your tracks. And hopefully you are prepared with these kind of things. All right, let's take the next couple slides to talk about where to get good, solid information. And then after that, we're going to talk about technology controls and finish up the presentation. There is a ton of information out there, and that's what I tried to represent here with the ones and zeros and the wave. You can get overwhelmed. Vendors love to send stuff out on LinkedIn and social media, sending you fear of like the world's going to come to an end if you don't buy their product to combat ransomware. It's a holistic approach. You cannot buy one product to solve this. However, you know, that this little arrow, this is my rudimentary graphic. This hasn't been through marketing, so please forgive me. This is my best effort. But, you know, the safe beach with the tree, I would like to talk just for a moment about 3 organizations, CISA, NIST, and CIS, which really can help you with timely, solid information and just save time, because time is everything with these kind of events. CISA. If you remember nothing else I say today, please remember CISA. Check out CISA.gov, and CISA has a ransomware section. CISA is, the government did something good with a website, believe it or not. They stood this organization up in 2018, and it's really part of the Department of Homeland Security. But they did focus groups, and people were confused because they're like, wait a minute, am I following the NSA's information, or am I following Department of Homeland Security? Am I following CENTCOM, or if the Navy was giving information? Who do I follow? And then, of course, there's all kinds of third-party feeds. And they decided we're going to pull together 17 information sharing organizations like the US CERTs and Department of Homeland Security, and put it in one place. And then what they really did was they hired marketing people and instructional design people to make it easy to follow. Imagine that, a government website that's easy to follow. And then they did a marketing campaign, and right after the Colonial Pipeline, and they stood up Stop Ransomware. You may have seen it on the nightly news. Stood up by the government, stopransomware.com. It's the one-stop shop for everything you need to know on how to protect yourself and your organization from ransomware. And you heard that night after night on TV, and they posted that out. Lots of great information here. 99% of it is free. I cannot recommend this enough to poke around there. They give you checklists and playbooks and training resources and alerts, very timely alerts and tools. Just to show you a few. If you dig in a little deeper, and you can't go to CISA, on the very first page, you're going to get hit with ransomware resources right away. All kinds of trainings, webinars, best practices, checklists, things you really need that'll help you if you're starting kind of from scratch in your left of bang activities. They also have great tools. This is a free tool you can run against your organization to see where you may have holes in the organization, so you know what to seal up, hardening your shores. They come out with great timely, and when I say timely, like right away, announcements of software that needs to be patched. So if you're like me and you've been around a long time, you used to have to follow all of these companies. You know, okay, if I had all these products, I'd have to follow them and look for alerts of what needs to be patched. CISA brings it all right into your inbox if you want. You go in, you sign up, you check off what you're interested in, and they work with these companies. So if Cisco has new releases that are critical patches, it's coming from CISA, you know, okay, this has been blessed. This has really been checked out. And CISA and Cisco have worked together and have let the world know. And these look rudimentary, but you click in and it gives you the guidance you need. That timeliness is key, because speed is everything. As soon as a gap comes out, The threat actors know about it and they start reverse engineering it and figuring out how to break into your organization using that access point. Vulnerabilities. I know I'm just going to click through these, but vulnerabilities, we all heard about Print Nightmare probably, and the Print Spoiler vulnerability. They were right on it, CISA, and they got the information out and showed you how to fix them. And then with ransomware, here's an example. So Kaseya hit, this was Friday, July 2nd at 4:44. So of course it's the evening of a Friday before a holiday weekend, and boom, out comes the Kaseya ransomware attack that was hitting MSPs. Very timely. This came right across my inbox. You can follow all these on socials. The good news is they also give you updates and guidance how to remediate. And if you notice, this is the second and this is the third. They had multiple updates between. So the overall point is this really could be your one-stop shop for getting great information. If you're in a regulated industry, whether it's something like CMMC or DFARS or HIPAA or any of those kind of things, one of the controls you must follow is you have to get good information from sites like this. And there's a reason. We need timely information so we can quickly change and react. All right, so, but I said I had 3 to recommend. NIST, I think most people by now really know NIST. NIST is over 100 years old, surprisingly. National Institute for Standards and Technology, but it's their framework, their cybersecurity framework, which is extremely helpful. There's a longstanding joke, nobody ever gets fired for following NIST. And that's because 1, it's seen as the gold standard, and 2, it really helps you focus on all areas of defense, not just protect. This is usually where folks tend to go, I bought a firewall, I bought EDR, I bought this, I bought that, we're good. You're not. Do you know where all your devices really are? How are you detecting when something is in your organization? When that happens, how are you responding with your playbooks? And the cycle continues. NIST is a phenomenal place to start. It can be a little overwhelming at first, but even just to start, get started and start to move forward. Highly recommend that. They have great resources. They came out with this one, I believe it was less than 60 days ago. It is a 2-pager. It's like a glossy, one side and the other side, and it gives you a quick breakdown on the things you should be thinking about and putting in place for your organization to prepare against a ransomware attack, much of which I am speaking about today and on the upcoming slides. Highly recommend if you Google that one, easy to find, it's free, but great resource. And then lastly, of those 3 things on my beach slide to help you get good, solid information, CIS, Center for Internet Security. You may know these over the years because of their CIS top 20 controls. They've been adjusted recently, but they really help with hardening your images. It's not just computers and servers. It could be your Wi-Fi devices. It could be your VMs in the AWS cloud, your firewalls, your switches. They also help with benchmarking. Key pieces to make sure you're stable. Depending upon the industry you are in, these things are free. If you're in education and nonprofit, this is in local government, this is free to you. If you're in for-profit, you may or may not get these for free, but the prices are reasonable. Okay, so we talked about 3 different places to get really good, solid information. And I'm not talking down about if you want to follow some other online resources. That's great too, but it's always good to have those 3 solid organizations to line things up against. All right, let's talk about technical controls, because this is what everyone always wants to talk about. They want to figure out, wait, how can I buy my way out of this thing? This is not an exhaustive list, but these are the top 8 that are recommended again and again and again by the organizations like I just mentioned, as well as industry experts. Before I get into them, I will note at the bottom, this is the foundation of everything. You need to have organizational commitment. If your board, your CEO, CFO, if they're not on board, they're going to have either a false sense of security or you're not going to really be able to protect the organization. And that is tough sometimes. You may have an owner of a company like, we're fine. And that's where we have to let them know, okay, but here are the risks. So let's jump into these 8. You'll notice there are stars next to 4 of them. These are the big 4 that insurance is focusing on significantly since the first of the year, because ransomware payments have become significant. Insurance can't keep paying out. So what they're doing is they are not re-upping organizations. We're hearing that from clients across all the states we're in and from insurance brokers. They are making organizations tighten up their controls, or they're not giving them cyber insurance anymore, or greatly increasing their copay and giving them much less control. So let me jump in, but we're going to be talking about security awareness training, patching and updates, multi-factor authentication, backup, air gap, and testing, hardening your environment, like we talked about with the water picture, security assessments, visibility, and the basics. So let's jump in. Security awareness training is the top of everyone's list always, and that's because your people are the largest target. You know, this cartoon's been around a long time, but it's still true. We can put all kinds of things in place. And if you can't read that, it says, you know, in this corner, we have firewalls and encryption and antivirus software, et cetera. And in this corner, we have Dave, and it says human error on his shirt. You know, it just takes one person to click on one thing to let the threat actors in. So what we do is we train our users. We train them in a systematic way. There's no one way to do this. But if you follow a tool, a dashboard, these screenshots are just from KnowBe4. That's the one people seem to know the most. There are other players that are out there. They do everything for you. They make it systematic and turnkey and automated, and it's proven. And they use instructional designers where you train your employees, you fish them, and then you analyze it and you share with them. And cyclically, they shows results very quickly. On average, people fail phishing 30 to 40% of the time. But with just a little bit of training, you can see the results pay off. Every time someone's clicking on something, that has let a bad guy in. So security awareness training is always the top of everyone's list when they make these kind of recommendations. Not expensive at all. A lot of players in the space. Yes, KnowBe4 is the king. They market a lot, so people know that name, but there are other names. This is one of the ones that the insurance companies of the 4 that they're really pressing down on. They want to see documented training. Mature patch management solutions and strategies. We have to patch everything, because when there is an update, that is the acknowledgement that from the software developed that they have a flaw. They have a hole in their software. When they make that acknowledgement isn't just going out to you, it's going out to the threat actors too. And they are quickly reverse engineering things to figure out how to get into your organization. And we want to it's not just patching the software, we are patching everything on whatever that device is, the operating system, the apps, the programs, the third parties, those are often forgotten. And then of course the firmware. And not just endpoints and servers, but everything. Things that are often forgotten: printers, copiers, IoT devices. Let's say you have sensors for refrigerator systems in your organization, or lighting systems. Often are forgotten. That's where the threat actors are going. So you want to patch everything, have a way to do that. I wouldn't try to do it manually. There are tools that you can buy that really can help you do this. It can automate a lot of this and make life a whole lot easier for you. So backups, notice the star. Again, this is one of the ones that insurance companies are really pressing back on and wanting proof that and we're not talking just backups. Of course, you have to have secure backups. And I can't tell you how many times we come into an incident response where they said they had a backup and they did, but it wasn't secure. They forgot to encrypt it, or it wasn't systematic. You know, Joe or Sally did the backups on these certain days up and they were on vacation and they were out. It really has to be an automated process, but this is what will save you these days, these next 3, and what insurance companies want to see. They want to see immutability. They want to see an air-gapped copy, and they want to see systematic testing. And what I mean by that is people usually have, okay, we have our production data, we have our backup data, We might even have a co-located backup data, but do you have something that's offline that the threat actors can't jump to? No cables, no wires. And there are many ways to do that. It's a little deeper than this conversation. Happy to have that conversation with you at any time though. And if they can get to these backups, are they immutable? They can't do a thing with them. And that's done through artificial intelligence and encryption. And then we've all heard, if we've, networking 101, a backup isn't a backup unless it's systematically tested. Manually over the years, that's how we did it. Now there's tools that do that. Two examples to show you coming up here. In the 3-2-1 rule, this has been around for like 30 years, but it speaks to what I was just saying. That you have at least 3 copies of your data, 2 copies are stored in separate locations, and 1 is offline. Not new. Don't be worried about the picture of the cloud of like, well, wait, do I have to put it in the cloud? No, you do not. You can put it on something like another piece of hardware in a separate location, maybe in a different locale. So, and then move the information over there. And there's ways to do that. Cloud is another way to do it though as well. This just happens to be Dell. I'm not selling Dell or anything like that, but I grabbed this slide to let you know the big companies, they've all known this for at least 5 years. This is what we need. We need isolation. This is your air gap with an air gap vault. Immutability, that's the encryption piece. And then the intelligence, helping to make sure it's recoverable. Here's just another quick screenshot. This one's VMware. They all have this kind of language. They want immutability. They want integrity checks. So that data is, if we have to pull it back in a DR, in a disaster recovery event, it's going to come back. We have that confidence. So that's what we're looking for there. Security assessments, as I go through that list of 8, our top 8, what we mean here are penetration tests and vulnerability assessments. I can remember going back as far as 2008, having to fill out the insurance form for our organization in regards to technology, and the questions, or 2 questions on there, hey, do you have firewall? Do you have antivirus? But have you had a third-party penetration test in the last 12 months? Yes or no? Have you had a third-party vulnerability assessment done in the last 12 months? Yes or no? First year, it was no. And then we realized, hey, it's affecting our insurance. And we had this cadence every year. They're usually done in tandem, saves you money, gives you better threat intelligence, and then whoever does them for you gives you a really nice report on how to seal up what is found. These are your white hat hackers that are hired to poke around your organization and use the same tactics, techniques, and procedures the bad guys would use, and then show you how to remediate them. One other assessment would be a compromise assessment. This is usually what, if you get ransomware, this is the first thing that an organization will come in and start standing up. You can think of this as like, you walk into a 5-star hotel, you walk in the room is beautiful, everything looks perfect, the chocolate is on the pillow. And if you took out one of those black lights and started shining it around the room, you might see some things that you didn't see with the naked eye. That's what a compromise assessment does to your network, and finds out, where they're deeply rooted, where they've buried in their command and control, and then you start to root that out. So that was with security assessments. We talked about hardening. That's with the water picture. There's a lot of words on this slide if you want to take a screenshot, but the bottom line is you want to harden everything you have. You don't just want to take it out of the box, because whatever comes out of the box is set up for convenience, not for security by default. You can go out to each company and find their best practices on what to harden. Did that for years myself. But you also can go to CISA, which I mentioned, and they have hardening services for you. They make it really easy, and then you get your golden images. And that's for everything, whether it's tablets, phones, VMs, you name it. You want to make sure they're hardened. Then when something goes bad, and in come the lawyers and the auditors and the insurance folks, you can say, well, wait a minute, we followed NIST best practices. We followed the CIS hardening best practices. And then they realize, okay, you did the best you could with you had your house in order, you followed best practices, and you have a better chance of not having a resume generating event. And by now, Everyone's grandmother now knows about multi-factor authentication with the pandemic and the insurance changes. Every conversation seems to be multi-factor authentication, MFA or 2FA, same thing. It's just another factor other than the password, username and password, something that you know, have, or are, could be your thumbprint. And then it lets you in. Because if someone steals your credentials, they get in, you know, it looks like it's you according to the log files. This is like a checks and balance, of course. It greatly changes the game. This is from RSA last year, and from Microsoft put this out on the slide. 99.9% of all compromises didn't have MFA in place. Happened on the Colonial Pipeline, wasn't the only thing, but they had a comedy of errors, and one of them was they didn't have MFA on the account where the guy was using the same usernames and passwords multiple times, and they forgot to seal up a VPN account that should have been closed, and they got in. All multi-factor authentication is not created equal. If you buy something, let's say you buy Duo. That's the big name everyone likes, either Duo or Microsoft Azure. Well, Duo is going to give you, I believe they have like 8 different choices that you can use with your employees. This is the main recommendation everyone makes. Go with an authentication app on a phone. Sometimes you get pushback. People say, well, I don't want that on my personal phone if there's not a corporate phone, or maybe you have union issues. So then tokens are a great way. Often happens with, okay, 90% of the organization says yes, and the CEO says, no way, give me one of those tokens. What I want to point out, though, is NIST has downgraded SMS text as no longer a reliable multi-factor authentication method, though people use it all the time. It's still really the norm, SMS text and email, but they're trying to get the message out there that it's easy to do, get man in the middle and be spoofed and other things. So when you put it in place, your multi-factor authentication, proving who you are, try to guide your organization in this zone if possible. I always like to stay away from the biometrics because you only have one thumbprint. I work a lot in the defense industrial base with DoD, and they talk about that all the time. You know, you only have one retina and you only have one thumbprint, and if that's taken, you know, you can always change your password or your token, but you can't change this. Just a word of advice. And then continuing along, here's another big one from the insurance companies these days, and of course on the top 8 that everyone recommends is visibility or telemetry. You have to be able to have your eyes on all your products and detect and respond when something bad happens. Endpoint detection is part of what we're talking about here. This is tools that you put on your endpoints. Think CrowdStrike, think Carbon Black, there are other names. And it quickly adds intelligence to your endpoints and can quickly let you know if something's wrong, even start to corral ransomware for you. They're wonderful. But to do it right, you want to add also either a SIEM, that's a security information and event manager. This is exactly what saved me 3 times in my organization from ransomware. We got hit with ransomware, people clicked on things, it started to spread like wildfire. The SIEM caught it. I'll show you a screen in a second. We got notified and quickly were able to harness and react and shut it down. And MDR is basically the same thing as a SIEM, but on a SIEM, you have to provide the analyst or someone to watch it. We're in managed detection response. They have a whole team of folks that do it for you. I present this to like CFOs a lot, and I always tell them, hey, if your CIO or tech director is coming to you and they're asking you for an EDR and these two, they're not being greedy. They need both. Because a lot of times like a CFO goes, well, we have EDR, we're good. You're not. And here's why. The SIEM is working at the endpoints and will do these kind of things. And, you know, it's focusing less on signatures and it's using heuristics and machine learning and has ransomware response tools. But, and I might have said SIEM there, I mean the EDR, endpoint detection response, but the SIEM, this will ingest any log you send at it. So firewall logs, switching logs, all kinds of things like that. Pull it into a dashboard and give you alerts for timely reaction and response. They look something like this. Very easy to get blur vision and screen blindness, and you have to provide the analysts. They have nice GUI interfaces, and SIEMs are great, But better, again, is a managed detection and response. This is just a screenshot from an article if there are plenty of players in the space. What this does is it uses sensors, agents, and APIs to touch the logs of all your stuff that you want it to, ingests it, has a team behind it of hundreds of analysts that are breaking things down and pulling in commercial feeds and OSINT information, and then they only come to you with 2 people assigned to your organization. It kind of looks like this. You got a lot of stuff and a lot of bad things happening, and they whittle it down and they only come to you with a couple things. This is based upon an organization of, I think, 200 users, to give you an idea of cleaning out all the false positives, and they only come to you with that. So that's a little bit on detection and response. And that gives you that ability to know what's going on in my stuff for a rapid response and then put my game plan in place. Those would be, you know, those left of bang activities. That's how you beat it. That's how we beat it 3 times. And then finally, the basics. And I'll tell you, so many times we come into an organization and they got ransomware because they just didn't do the basics, like have an update inventory. You may have seen this one go around LinkedIn over the last year. Kind of funny, but it's true. If you do not know what's on your network, if you have shadow IT, something is going to, you can't protect something that you don't know about. And that's what the bad guys are looking for. And then I'm going to just click through the basics, making sure ports are shut off or jacks or remote access. This goes back to Colonial. They forgot to shut something off. Least privilege access. I mean, this is right out of Networking 101, but in the real world, we all know it's kind of hard when people ask for something and then to pull that back from them. Same thing with local admin privileges. Your users should not be able to install. This is a big, big way ransomware happens. Your people who can install, they shouldn't use their normal account. So my normal account, Finlayson, should be able to install nothing. I should have an obfuscated account that is used to do anything that's touching server switches, admin rights, and installs that threat actors would have a very hard time finding. Because I'm a target. They know you're the CIO. They see it on a website. They're coming after you. And of course, changing default passwords. I can tell you the first time I had a pen test in 2009, my 22 copiers that I had, all 22, the major copier brand, one of the biggest, left the default password and username on all of my copiers. So you want to change those things, of course. And then, of course, no shared passwords. We know all those things. We're running short on time, so I'm just going to go through this very quickly. But here's kind of like a review of what we covered. You know, they're going to be coming at you with phishing and social engineering. They're looking for unpatched devices, software, and apps. And then any kind of weakness, that's where we need to harden things, whether it's your devices or your network. They're going to gain a foothold and try to build out a command and control. That's where we want to shut that down with detection tools. They want to try to move laterally, escalate their privileges, exfiltrate things that are important to you, and then they ransomware your backups first. That's where that air gap's going to help you. And then if you don't pay, they're going to want to start to name and shame or double extortion. And I just kind of covered these right now. These are the 8: the security awareness training, a robust, mature patch management system, multi-factor authentication, of course. We talked about the air gap and immutable testing, and hardening everything you have in your organization. Security assessments on a cadence, usually once a year, your detection tools, and then the basics. And they have to work in concert. They can't just be, well, we bought all this stuff, but it doesn't talk to each other, or we don't really know how to use it. We don't have policies, procedures in place. A quick last note here is that, you know, just because you have met compliance on something does not mean you have security. You need to make sure, again, everything is working in concert to help you out. Now, Owen, is it this point that we would want to stop and have questions and answers?
Yes. If anyone has any questions, please. I think we should do it, what, through chat, or through we just allow them to come through the mic?
And I'm fine with either, Owen, whatever works for you.
Okay. If anyone has any questions for Mark, please turn on your mic and you can start asking your questions, or we can be reading through the chat. Oh, I guess you did a great job, Mark. Oh, here we go. No questions, but I appreciate the emphasis on the variety of manners in which the systems can be and should be hardened.
Absolutely. It's a hard thing to do. It's not easy, but it's a continual process. And that's where when you get those updates from someplace like a CISA, you are constantly hardening and get a good tool in place that will let you know when things need to be hardened as well. Lots of great tools out there.
Yeah. Well, for everyone's information, Mark's presentation is being recorded, and we will copy it up to our webpage and create a link to the recording so that you can view it with other people in your organization or family, so that you can share the information and take the benefit of the information that Mark provided back to your place of work. And it was very, very valuable. Mark, I want to thank you so much for doing this for us today. And hopefully we'll be able to do this again next year, and things will be better controlled at that point.
Owen, I appreciate the opportunity. If anyone ever needs any help, you see my information. I'm very happy to help you. I'm not in sales. I'm a trusted advisor, so I'm always happy to help anyone in need. And I appreciate the opportunity again, Owen, for being here today.